Thank you. Hello everyone. What I'm showing you here is actually a beautiful picture of a video game called SimCity. It's a video game I played a lot when I was young, and the goal was to develop cities. You could make the roads and the houses that runs basically very smoothly. Well, my goal was of course to always build my own neighborhood, and I could recognize really some kind of behaviors. In the evening I could see cars coming home, in the morning I could see them leave for work. And let's suppose for a second that we can do this game really good. So we can model the neighborhood where you live, and we simulate that, and we focus on EV behavior. So we focus on the EVs that are in the neighborhood. For example, we take your neighborhood and we take 1,000 houses. Maybe there are around 50 EVs right now, and we model their driving behavior, we model their charging behavior. If we could play that game, that would be a really useful exercise to see what the impacts on the electricity grid are for with charging behavior and different kinds of adoption of electric vehicles. Well, I guess I never really grew up, because I'm actually playing that game right now, and that's where this talk is about. The topic is the impact of EV charging behavior on the electricity grid with future technologies. Basically, I'm going to explain to you how me and Hogeveen Hoekstra are going to develop, or are developing, a simulation model with which we can simulate the impact of charging behavior. And we can also add smart charging to it, fast charging. So we can use all types of future technologies and see what the impact on the grid is with these simulations. The project is an NKL project, so there are a lot of other EV stakeholders involved as well. Shortly, the structure about this talk. I'm starting with the research goal, and I'm giving you a small overview of the model we are developing. I'm going to explain you why simulations can be very useful for this topic, how we are going to develop a realistic model from that. And basically we do that by using shapefiles, among other. I'm going to show you a small preview of what we have right now. And finally I will explain to you what the results will be. Well, here I have one of the many figures that illustrates EV is developing very fast. Everything in the EV sector basically, not only vehicle sales, but also the charging infrastructure. The numbers itself are not very important, but basically we are very happy with these fast developments in the EV sector. At least I think we are. I am, and I think it contributes to a more sustainable society. But these fast developments also introduce a lot of uncertainties. Among other things we just heard from Marieke, what will be the impact of EV adoption on the electricity grid? Public parties might be curious about what influence policies will have. How much, if you give a subsidy on electric vehicles, what will be the influence of that? How much faster will adoption go? And market parties, of course, are interested in what their business is going, how their businesses are going to develop in the coming few years. So here we have Hogeveen Hoekstra. Hogeveen is on a daily basis involved with these EV stakeholders and also these questions. So Hogeveen was thinking, kind of like he is doing on this picture, how am I going to answer these questions? Well, he thought, well, we can make Excel sheets, we have some market extrapolations, but that's not very suitable because all these things are so dependent on each other. The buying behavior of electric vehicles really depends on the charging infrastructure that is available and vice versa. So Hogeveen said we need better EV models. And actually he made that his goal, to develop a model that answers these questions altogether. So the last 1.5 years he really thought about how we should do that, made a problem definition, looked at which modeling approaches are suitable for it. And the last 6 months I've joined him, and this is basically what we've come up with. We want to develop a model that takes everything into account. Buying, the charging, the driving, we think we can't see that separately.
Use the mic for it, yeah.
Sorry. We think we can't see those things separately. And when you even look a little bit further, We think also battery and vehicle developments should also be in the model. Social behavior of residents, how people charge, how people drive, should be in the model. The electricity grid should be in the model. The developments of charge points, then rollout of charge point, everything. We want to include everything. So we want to do this holistic approach of a simulation model. And then we also want to simulate this in real neighborhoods. We don't just want to make virtual neighborhoods, but we want to somehow develop something that we can simulate all these dynamics in real neighborhoods. Well, first you might think that seems very complex to define all these dynamics with formulas and equations, but in fact we don't even need that, not if we used agent-based modeling. Agent-based modeling is a modeling paradigm in which you describe the behavior of the entities in your system from a bottom-up approach. Meaning that, for example, if you want to model driving behavior, you just say to individual car owners, well, you have a car and you go to home in the morning, maybe 4 days a week. In the weekend there's a 50% chance you make a weekend trip. So we can define a lot of EV drivers and all of them can be different. And the same goes for all the elements in the model. You can make many scenarios and many agents that behave on a different way. So we call the model the ABCD model, which stands for Agent-Based Model for Buying, Charging and Driving of Electric Vehicles. So why are simulations so useful for this topic? Well, imagine we would have such a simulation. Imagine we have a real neighborhood in a model. We have the real electricity grid implemented. We have realistic driving behavior, realistic charging behavior, and realistic technology developments. For example, in 5 years, autonomous cars enter the market. So what will change in the system? Well, driving behavior may change, charging behavior may change. So suppose we have such a model. We can really use this to analyze the impact of the grid of a wide variety of scenarios. We can add things as smart charging. We can add a thing, the question for Maarten in the end was about mobility patterns may change a lot. We can add all those things to the model if you want to study that. Autonomous cars can be added. We can study the impact of vehicle to grid and how that could benefit Nexus, for example, with their grid enhancement projects. Other things we can use it for is to test public policies, charge point rollout, subsidies, as I mentioned a few slides before. And we can also model, because we are simulating a real neighborhood, the impact on public space. And of course, you will see the charge point business cases, because people are charging, so you know at which point in time people are the charge points are used and at what prices. So that sounds nice to have a model like that, to simulate real neighborhoods with all the real characteristics, but how will we try to get there, right? So for that we have a big consortium of EV stakeholders. We have municipalities, charge point operators, grid operators, car manufacturers are involved, universities and EV experts. So with all these together, we are developing this model. And we will use the expertise of all of them in defining these elements. So that we are making a real neighborhood based on socio-demographic data, open data. We use knowledge from municipalities to really, when we have this neighborhood, to really simulate correct behavior of visitors, for example, of offices in the building, how many people, how many commuters come in every day, how many commuters come out. So we make a neighborhood and we test it with the knowledge from the local municipality. We'll use the local grid operator to define the electricity grid of our model. And these three elements are a little bit different, or a little bit more difficult, I could say. We can base them on statistics and on knowledge of all the people, all the parties in the consortium. But in the end, they differ quite a lot. In 5 years, driving behavior may be different. Charging behavior may be different. Prices may be different. Right? So we need to make a lot of scenarios for that as well. So how will we make a real neighborhood in our model? Well, here we see a picture of the Zeeheldenkwartier in The Hague. Some of you might recognize it. This is the same picture, but then a street view. And we used this area as a test area, and we made a shapefile from it, which is this one, where we used open data and identified which buildings are houses, which buildings are offices, which buildings are attractions like supermarkets and people come to. And the idea is that we use this neighborhood to put in our model, and that's what we did. And now you see the same neighborhood, but this is a picture from our model. Let's see. So in our model, we added the neighborhood, and now all the houses and all the buildings and all the roads, they are agents. And agents in agent-based modeling are entities that interact with other agents. So for example, we have built this neighborhood in the model, and we add cars to it, we add residents to it, and we give them all kinds of behavior. And right here, you see several dots. I added only around, I think, 100 cars to this neighborhood right now. The red ones are commuters from outside, so they come from here, and during the day they come here to work, and they park somewhere close to the blue offices. The black ones are just visitors coming to shop or whatever. And the yellow dots are residents of the neighborhood that during the day, mostly they go out of the neighborhood, and in the evening they come back. But this is just to demonstrate this is not the realistic behavior we are going to model in the end. So this next picture is the same model, the same neighborhood, but it's a 3D figure. We see several layers here, and this is the first layer is just the neighborhood with some depth. The second layer is the road network and the cars where they are currently at this time step. And when the simulation goes on, when the simulation runs, you see the agents moving and the cars moving. And you could say, well, this car is charging at this moment, for example, because you monitor at every point in time. You monitor the depth of charge. Another thing we can add is, for example, we can add here another layer with the parking places. And you could see which parking spots are taken at which moment. We can add a layer with charging points and see which charging points are being used. We can add everything we want, basically. So right now, this is just the Zeeheldenkwartier in The Hague. But because of the way the model is set up, we can add any shapefile to this. So we could use any neighborhood around here, any neighborhood in a small village, and just implement it in the model. And the goal is, in the end, of course, to add realistic driving behavior, realistic charging behavior, the real electricity grid, developments in the EV sector. So we simulated, and in 2025, very cheap or EVs with a very big capacity come out, and people start buying them. So buying behavior is modeled as well, and the charge points and technologies. What is important is that all these things, they are modeled in separate modules, which make this a very adaptive and modular approach. And we have students working on each module, basically. So that's the end goal of this model. And we think policymakers and grid operators can use this model to study real cases, real interesting cases. For example, the picture Marieke showed, neighborhoods which were red from a nexus. You could put it in a model and simulate, well, how could smart charging contribute to saving grid investments? Well, with that and the stunning picture of a polar bear and two cups, I'd like to end.
Thank you.